Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN, of whom, more in a bit. I have a video coming up that deals with the big terminus stations of central London, and a question I wondered about was whether I should also cover the closed termini in that video. And then I thought, but I've never actually listed the closed termini, so I'd have to explain what they are and who built them, and it would make the video way longer than it needs to be. So instead I'm making a separate video talking, in general, about London's closed termini. The way it goes is this. London has always been a difficult place to get a railway built. Land is expensive, it's often owned by wealthy and influential people who can make life difficult. The geography is quite challenging, and there's usually a lot of stuff that needs to be demolished. So what happened in the 19th century was that the railway companies built their London termini where they could. Then, when they had the money, they abandoned their old termini or turned them over to other uses. The first London terminus was Spa Road on the London and Greenwich Railway. It opened in 1836 and was superseded later that year by London Bridge. The London and Greenwich was London's first passenger railway and one of the world's first commuter railways. Spa Road was closed and re-sited in 1867. The new Spa Road lasted until 1915. I was slightly reluctant to discuss Spa Road on the ground that it was only really a terminus for a few months. But since it was the first, I think it would be unfair not to at least mention it. Next up is an old favourite of mine, Minories, just east of Fenchurch Street. This was opened by the London and Blackwall Railway in 1840. What makes it interesting is that, unlike the London and Greenwich Railway, the London and Blackwall did not use locomotives. Rather, the carriages were hauled on a long rope with a stationary engine based at Minories to provide power. This unusual, unreliable, and sometimes dangerous mode of haulage was used for the first 9 years, after which locomotives were brought in. Fenchurch Street was opened in 1841, replacing Minories. But the station remained in place for another 12 years, finally closing in 1853, or rather, closing to passengers. It remained as a goods station until 1951. Tower Gateway on the Docklands Light Railway now occupies the site. I've been showing you some ruins that may or may not be the original station. Nobody seems to have any proof either way, and historians are therefore reluctant to say for sure. Bricklayers' Arms is an interesting one. Remember I mentioned London Bridge, the terminus of the London and Greenwich Railway? Well, there were two other companies that ran into this station in the 1840s, the South Eastern Railway and the London and Croydon. Both of these companies were unhappy about the amount that the London and Greenwich were charging them to use London Bridge, so they had their own station built on the Old Kent Road, and that was Bricklayers' Arms. Fearing the loss of a lucrative customer, the London and Greenwich negotiated better terms for the London and Croydon, who therefore went back to using London Bridge and stopped using Bricklayers' Arms. Then, in 1845, the South Eastern Railway leased the London and Greenwich Railway, effectively taking it over, so they didn't need Bricklayers' Arms either. In 1846, the London and Croydon Railway became part of the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway, who sold their share of Bricklayers' Arms to the South Eastern. The station was closed to regular passenger traffic in 1852, although it would remain in railway use as a goods depot and engine shed. Now, the London and Greenwich Railway may have offered unfavourable terms for the use of their line, but you don't have to endure unfavourable terms when shopping online, thanks to this video's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. You see, sometimes companies offer different prices to people in different regions. With Surfshark's servers in over 100 countries, what you can do is switch your location virtually, so you can get the best possible price. But that's not all. Streaming services offer different content depending where you are, so with Surfshark you can access all their content for maximum value. What's more, Surfshark offers advanced encryption, which gives you an additional layer of protection online by hiding your digital identity from the sorts of people who like to spy on internet users. And unlike other VPNs, Surfshark can be used on all platforms and unlimited devices. If you need any more incentive, the good people at Surfshark have an offer for viewers of this channel. Follow the link in the description below, or use the QR code that should be appearing on screen right about now, and you can get 3 months extra on top of a 2-year plan if you enter the code JAGO. There's even a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied. So, now your digital future is secure, let's go back to talking about places with very insecure futures. Now I'm going to head back in time to talk about 9 Elms. 9 Elms should not be confused with the current tube station. It was built in 1838 for the London and Southampton Railway, which became the London and South Western Railway that same year. Now the LSWR had their eyes on central London, the West End or preferably the City. 9 Elms is nowhere near either of those places, but it was a start. 10 years after 9 Elms, the LSWR got Waterloo Bridge Station. This was also intended as a stopgap terminus on the way to the city, but this time they got no further, and Waterloo is the terminus of the Southampton line to this day. Now, as for 9 Elms, it had an odd sort of duality to it after Waterloo took over most of the passenger service. The types of traffic that 9 Elms was best known for were goods and royalty. 9 Elms was obviously quieter than Waterloo and safer, so it made sense for the LSWR to send royal trains off from here. Anyway, the station closed altogether in 1968, and now the new Covent Garden Market is there. Now we're heading east to Bishopsgate, the Eastern Counties Railway's terminus, which was built in 1840. It is not in Bishopsgate, but in Shoreditch. And in fact it was known as Shoreditch from 1840 to 1846. The name was changed because, well, back then, no one wanted to go to Shoreditch. Not even the Eastern Counties Railway, which became the Great Eastern Railway in 1862, and opened Liverpool Street Station in 1874. Bishopsgate remained open to passengers until 1875, after which it was converted into a goods station, which lasted until 1964. The ruins are still very much visible, and Shoreditch High Street Overground Station sits within them. I feel like having just talked about Bishopsgate, I should also mention Broad Street. This was the North London Railway's terminus, situated right next to Liverpool Street. They shared it with the London and North Western Railway, with whom they had a friendly relationship, and ultimately would amalgamate. It opened in 1865. The North London Railway was a rather indirect route into the city, and when the underground and tram networks really got off the ground in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Broad Street just couldn't compete. It limped on until 1986, when the dilapidated station was finally closed. The Broadgate complex sits on the site, although part of the route into the old station is now part of the Overground, the very same line that leads into Shoreditch, in fact. The most short-lived terminus is King's Cross, and to be honest, I was hesitant to even include it. Now I know what you're thinking. King's Cross is very much open. I'm talking about the original King's Cross station. It was about here. It was opened in 1850 as the temporary terminus of the Great Northern Railway. It lasted just over 2 years until King's Cross Station opened in 1852. It's usually referred to as Maiden Lane, but apparently it was known as King's Cross from the start. Probably because the Great Northern always planned to open their terminus at King's Cross, and they figured it was easier to use the same name for both. Maiden Lane was absorbed into the railway's massive complex of goods facilities. Speaking of short-lived termini, how could I forget Pimlico? It, too, lasted just over 2 years, and it, too, had an inaccurate name. It was actually in Battersea. It was built by the West End of London and Crystal Palace Railway and lasted from 1858 to 1860. What did for it was the opening of Victoria Station. Actually, it was known that Victoria was going to be built before Pimlico even opened, so it's no surprise that they built Pimlico on the cheap. Yet again, it became a goods depot. There's a sort of 3 for the price of 1 on abandoned stations from Southwark to Farringdon. In 1864, the London, Chatham and Dover Railway opened Blackfriars Bridge, just south of the titular bridge. At the time, it was the closest they could get to the City of London, which was where they really wanted to end up. It was only the terminus for a year. Literally a year. The replacement terminus opened on the 1st of June 1865, exactly a year after Blackfriars Bridge. That replacement station was Ludgate Hill, As Termini go, it was very small and inadequate for city traffic. So, in 1874, the company opened Holborn Viaduct to take the overspill. In 1886, St. Paul's was opened, between Ludgate Hill and Blackfriars Bridge. As far as the company was concerned, there really wasn't much point in having two Blackfriars stations, particularly when one was on the wrong side of the river. So, in 1886, Blackfriars Bridge was closed to passengers, although it would continue as a goods depot until 1965. St. Paul's would later be renamed Blackfriars in 1937. In 2012, Blackfriars Station would be rebuilt, and now spans the river, with the southern entrance not at all far from the old Blackfriars Bridge station. Even with the closure of Blackfriars Bridge, the situation with stations was kind of a mess. Within about a 5-minute walk, there were 3 stations: St. Paul's, Ludgate Hill, Holborn Viaduct. The Southern Railway, who had taken the London, Chatham and Dover Railway over in 1923, decided that Ludgate Hill was the obvious candidate for closure. It was awkward to operate, it had few passengers, and it was right in the middle. So in 1929 it was closed to passengers. Holborn Viaduct lasted a lot longer, making it to 1990. But it wasn't a very popular station by that point, with few services outside of rush hour. The Thameslink programme was on its way. This was a programme to revitalise commuter services by reopening the old London, Chatham and Dover railway link through central London. Holborn Viaduct was to be replaced with a new station, City Thameslink, which partially occupies the old site. So that is, I think, all the closed termini in or near central London. Each of them has their own story, and I hope to cover all of them in greater detail in due course. Well, at least, the ones I haven't covered already. Well, I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon, and here on YouTube for your kind support. You are the replacement terminus to my temporary station. I would also like to thank Surfshark for again sponsoring me. Please do click the link in the description below to take advantage of their generous offer. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.